Hi, friends. I'm Erin Thompson of Everyday Expressions, and I'm so excited that you're here with me today. The holiday crafting season is one of my favorite times of the year, and I thought as I was making some of my holiday cards that it would be fun to share with you how you can take your cards that people open and say, "Oh, that's pretty," to ones that people open and say, "That's pretty spectacular." So this idea came about because as I study some of my favorite artists' posts on social media, when I look at their cards and it makes me kind of stop and really look at it. As you start to study it, think about what you like or what makes that card stand out to you. And as I do that from some of my favorite designers, one thing that I often notice is the background. When you really break it all down, the background is what takes that card over the top. So I encourage you, when you follow someone, start thinking about what they do that you can do in your cards. And I think I've talked about this before, but it really came to me as I was beginning to create with this new collection from Picket Studios. And I just started creating and creating and creating because there's so many fantastic things to make your backgrounds pop. And so that's how this whole idea came about, is what ideas I can share with you to really take your cards to the next level. So the first thing that I used was this cover plate, and this is called the Simple Plaid Cover Plate die. And what you see here is that I cut it out of different colors of cardstock, and just layering one of those die cuts on a card base is fantastic. It really adds a lot of dimension and texture without detracting from your focal point. But to take it even like to the next step, maybe this is a card that you want to give to some of your favorite people, someone who will keep the card and really appreciate the beauty of it. Is I like to die cut like 3 times and layer it up so it really pops off the card base. And then you really have a lot of depth and dimension. And so, whether you just do 1 layer or you do 2 or 3 layers, just play with it and see what works for you. So that's my first one. Then you see, now I'm using the Christmas Tree Farm stencil, and I'm using the Paper Glaze Luxe collection from Picket Studios. That first one on green, I used Twinkle Lights Clear, and now on white, I'm using Twinkle Lights Gold. And I just apply that through the stencil with a palette knife. And you definitely want to use a non-stick mat or like a silicone mat. And right away, as you remove this, I always go clean up your mat first and then rinse your stencil and palette knife right away, because this is pretty sticky and you don't want it to dry permanently on any of your tools. So and that looks really pretty on those. And you'll see the samples again later, because what I'm doing here is I just start to create, and whatever comes to mind, I try different things and I create lots of backgrounds and then pick my favorite ones to create the cards for you today. So now this one, this is the, let's see, this is another stencil, and this is the Snowy Breeze stencil. And I'm using the Twinkle Lights Clear Luxe Glaze on this one. And I think the dimension and the sparkle on this come out so pretty. And the other thing I like about the paper glaze is that it does dry fairly quickly. It's kind of chunky, it's got some glitter, and it's got some like chunky bits in it, but it does dry. I set it aside as I worked on some other things, and then it was dry when I was ready. And you see I kind of scraped the sides there off of my cardstock. I didn't do it on the Christmas tree stencil, but I did it there, and it cleans it up so that the edges are nice, especially if you're not trimming that panel down when you create your card. Now I've moved on to stamping. We're going to take all those backgrounds and actually create cards. So I'm using this beautiful new stamp set designed by Kelly Taylor, and it's called Winter Blooms. And as soon as I saw this stamp set, I knew I had to have it because if you know me, I love poinsettias. And one thing that I wanted to do, many times you'll see me coloring a lot of stamps, especially in my Picket Fence Studio videos. But sometimes you just don't feel like coloring. And I wanted to show you, you don't have to color these line art stamps all the time. And if you're not a colorer, there's still so many things you can do. So on all of these, I wanted to concentrate on the backgrounds and think about if you're mass producing a lot of holiday cards, you don't have time to, hand color every single one. So all I did for this stamp set on this one was there was absolutely no coloring, and I used my Wow embossing powders. This is the metallic super fine polished gold. I love the super fine polished line from Wow. So this is the gold. Silver would be beautiful. There's just, I forget what other colors they have in the line, but the gold looks beautiful on the traditional reds and greens. You'll see in a second, I even use it on black and it just looks beautiful. No coloring needed. Now, I will say I didn't do it on these cards, but if you want to even go an extra step, it looks really beautiful to do a tone on tone and take like a darker red ink. And I do it in several of my videos. You can go back to prior videos or some of my cards you've seen during the holidays and add in some darker red ink blending around the edge. And it really spotlights your focal point, really adds something else. But if you don't have time, this stamp set just looks beautiful all on its own. So here I am. I wanted to show you what it would look like to take the smaller individual stamp in that set and kind of stamp it all over a background and create another one that way. You'll see once we emboss this, look how pretty that is. Add a sentiment on that. You could do a little bit of ink blending. So many different ideas in this video. And I just want you to take what's going to work for you and just try to apply it to some of your cards. It really didn't take that long. And there's just so many different options you could mass produce easily. Now on this one, using that Christmas tree stencil, I used my embossing ink, went through the stencil, and then put the embossing powder. And now I'm going to heat set it. Look how pretty this one looks on black. Really, really pretty. So we used the Luxe for the green one and the white one in the beginning, the paper glaze, and then on that one, I used embossing ink. Now, once again, I'm using the large stamp, and I stamped it a couple of times, heat emboss it, and then we're going to die cut it. And you'll see in a moment that I used that black Christmas tree background and add these to the front to create a card. So this die. I love these large word dies. This is the Merry Christmas word die. And there's a whole collection of different sentiments that Picket Fence is offering. And I like the narrow capital letters, and then there's always a scripty sentiment that you can place over top of it or inside the card, whatever works for you. So now I'm trimming a piece of vellum. I've talked about this before, a quick and simple thing when you've got a beautiful background and you need to put a sentiment over it. Sometimes you need to soften the background so that your sentiment will pop. And I like to use vellum on like a belly band there or right in the center. And I have to tell you, I've been experimenting with vellum, and stay tuned because I'll do a live or a video soon. All vellums are not created equal, and my favorite used to be basil, but they don't produce it anymore. So I had to go on the hunt for a vellum that I liked, and I definitely have experimented and found you need to find one that works for you, because there are heavyweight vellums, there are much lighter weight vellums, and then there's stuff all in between. So we'll talk about that later, but this is a heavyweight vellum. It gives a lot of weight to your sentiment and is kind of sturdy to hold that there. And it's you can still see the background through it, but it doesn't totally block it. So I just think, I love how the Christmas tree backgrounds came out. I think that in and of itself makes a beautiful background. And then look how pretty this red one is. I just loved that chunky luxe glaze on the red with that big and bold stencil. You don't need a whole lot for a card with this. It definitely is a spectacular background. If you know me, I always like to add foam. And so even if I'm sending a card, if it's an A2 size card, don't forget, buy those non-machinable stamps. They're just a little bit more than a regular price stamp, but you can add in, as long as it fits in an A2 envelope, you can add as much dimension as you want. And the non-machinable stamps, I believe, have the butterflies on them. And as long as it fits in that envelope, they don't run it through the machine, and you can add as much foam tape as you want. And so that always makes my heart happy because I love a lot of dimensions. So I pop that panel up, I wrap that vellum around it, and then I adhere it to my card base. And I did trim that panel. I think you may have seen I trimmed it down just 1/4 of an inch on 2 sides. And there we've got that. And now I am going to create a stencil, or kind of a, what do I want to use? The word that I want to use, a guide to place my letters in, because I've told you before, I can never get these individual letters straight. So I like to create a guide to use. And that's what I'm doing here. It's the same exact size as my vellum. So I knew that my sentiment would be right in the middle. And I just tape this down and then run it through my die machine. And don't throw those letters away. Obviously, the red ones I'm going to keep for another card. But I decided on this one, I wanted to make my letters sparkly. So you'll see in a moment, I use some, and that's repositionable tape you see me doing right there. So I know I can stick it down to the vellum, and it's not going to leave any residue and will come up easily. Now, one thing, if I can make a suggestion, if I were doing this again, it's so fine. For instance, on the M, the little cardstock pieces that come up, or even the R, if you can trim that straight across and just fit your letter into the outline, I kind of overlapped that when I glued those in, and then it made it a little bit tricky, you'll see, to pull up my guide once I have all my letters glued down. So if I had cut that out, it would have been much easier to pick up afterwards. So that's just something I'll do next time. Here's another little tip that I have for you. When you're gluing in like fine pieces, and you may have seen me do this on that red plaid cover plate die cut. It's a very fine line, and it's easy to get too much glue, and then you get it on your fingers and you get it on your die cut. And even though it's clear glue, you still see kind of that glossy mistake on your die cuts. So one thing that I like to do is I'll add glue to the background, and then with an extra sheet of paper, I kind of dab off those die cuts, and it takes a little bit of that extra glue off, and then it will still adhere, and you don't have all the mess from too much glue. So I did that on the cover plate background, on these letters, anything like that. Here you see me pulling up the guide, and this is where it got a little tricky on the M. So I really had to like put my tweezers under it and kind of go under the red and kind of pull it up. So this was kind of a one-time use kind of guide, but that's okay. We can throw that away and make another one next time. But cut that out, those little fine bits, and then it'll go much easier for you. But overall, I love how it came out. All my letters are perfect now. Press them back down, make sure they're adhered. And now I'm going to add glue, and you'll see that I layer this with a white shadow for the Mary. Dab that extra glue off. And now I'm going to layer it over the Mary and then add more glue and adhere it to my card. This card came out perfect the way it was. I did not even add any gems, no embellishments, because that background is so sparkly and chunky and pretty all on its own that I thought with the big focal point sentiment, we didn't need anything else. It was perfect the way it was. What do you think? Do you like have you used the Luxe? Have you used any paste through stencils like this for your Christmas cards? I think it's just so pretty. It's fun to use those different mixed media products. And, not everybody does it. So when someone gets a card like this, they want to feel it. And it really does take your card to pretty spectacular. I have to say, I love this one. So now for these heat embossed frames, I'm just adding foam tape, and you'll see here, there's my red one with all the dimension. So I add even more with my frame and then my sentiment. But you'll notice I give you samples. If you're not into all the foam and that adds extra work to your holiday cards, you don't want to buy the non-machinable stamps. I show you 3 different ways here. So in the red, I have the extra dimension from the die cuts. I have lots of foam. And now here's the white one. I'm not adding any foam to this one. Ooh, there you see how it would be pretty with the green background. Showing you options here. And the green would look pretty on the white. Just depends what works for you. I really like the tone on tone, but so many different ideas here. I thought that one was so pretty. Now I'm looking for sentiments for all of these, and I went through some of the different stamp sets. I think this one was released last month. And here's a little tip. I always put my sentiment down on my table. Then I pick it up that way from my block. And it just seems it's always straight that way and not crooked, and works really well. So back to what I was saying. So the red has lots of dimension. You'll see in a moment the white one I wanted to show you with no foam tape, no extra layers of die cuts. It's just all adhered into one layer, and I still think it's beautiful. So it really depends on if, there are times I don't want to do the extra work and use all the foam tape. You don't want to spend the extra on non-machinable stamps. It's a beautiful card just the way it is. But because we added that extra detail of the background, it just takes it from a basic card to a really pretty card with a little bit. The eye is tricked. It's not a lot of dimension, but it's a little bit, and it's just enough. So that was the point in the white one. And then in the green one, I think you'll see I did not add any extra die cut layers, but I did add foam behind the frame and on the sentiment. So we'll see the difference in all those in a moment. And here's the black one. And I'm putting this one together. I'm sorry, I know I jumped back and forth, but it was just kind of my process. First we created all the backgrounds, and now I'm creating the cards for you. So there may be, I know there's a lot in this video. I kind of wanted to give you a big bang for your buck and give you lots of ideas. Even if you just pull out one idea or one kind of card you want to use that same kind of layout, that sketch, that's great. Hopefully there's a little bit of something for everyone in here. And don't forget other things you can do for the background. You can ink blend using those stencils. You could even create a stencil using that plaid cover plate and ink blend through it. Add interest to your backgrounds with the paper splatter. I love that. I did not do any of that this time. I love a good splatter on a card. But there are lots of ways. We could have ink blended through that Snowy Breeze stencil. We could have colored our flowers, and that would have just been spectacular. But these, I just wanted to do something a little bit more simple. No coloring this time. Sometimes we get in the rut of doing the same thing over and over again. And of course, if you've seen any of the other designers' cards with this stamp set, they're gorgeous colored. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, here's the white card. No extra foam tape, no added layers. And now let's add some bling with these North Pole gems. This is one of the final steps, finishing these off. And there you see the panels that I did not even use. Here I made, 5 cards for you. I still have 3 more panels to make 3 more cards. 3 very different designs, but each one fantastic. And I just love that. Look at those. I can't wait to use these Christmas tree backgrounds. I just thought they were so pretty. So what do you think? Do you have a favorite one? I just don't know if I can pick a favorite. I love them all. I don't know. I love them all. So I can't wait to hear which one you love. Thank you so much for watching today. I would love it if you don't follow me yet, please subscribe to be notified when there's a new video available. Also like this one, and I can't wait to see what you're creating and how you can take your cards from just pretty to pretty spectacular. There you go. That's all of them. And now we'll run through the pictures. And thanks so much for watching again, everyone. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.